The Lore Network.
Nerds, geeks, and dweebs alike love their particular fandom and often challenge those around them to resist the temptation to become fans themselves. Welcome to Resist This, a podcast put on by Focus Fire Chat, where I, Blue Crew 86, and Green-Eyed Music Lover challenge each other to consume various books, TV shows, and, well, really any other fandom-inspiring content, and then discuss the ups, downs, insides, and outs, all sides, really. All the things. This episode, we featured I guess it's a fandom? I don't know. It's more of a favorite of mine. Merchant and Alchemist Gate. It's a short story that actually is connected to Destiny. I challenged Green to read, I think it's like 5 pages. No, it's like, what? It's 20 pages?
It's not super long, but it took me a good bit of time to read just because you kind of want to slowly work your way through it.
Yeah, and this one especially, it does actually, like, there's a few parts where I remember when I read through first time and I was like, hang on, wait. And I had to go back a couple pages to be like, what is going on? Okay, yeah. But I mean, yeah, so like this is Merchants and Alchemist Gate. So kind of a basic introduction of how I was introduced to it. Actually, it was Destiny that introduced me to it. There's a reference to this back in D1 with Ghost Fragments. What was that? Vex. And this was a reference that I believe Maya Sundaresh made while they were dealing with the problematic Vex simulations of themselves. And so I went digging and I found out that it was a short story that was written actually fairly recently. It was like in the late 2000s, early 2010s, by Ted Chiang. Chiang. I don't know how you pronounce the last name, but it's a short story. It's very, very in the same vein as like Philip K. Dick, Philip K. Dick and Arthur C. Clarke's short stories. That's kind of the feeling that I got with it, especially with like the length of it. It's a really easy read, and so I had kind of found a PDF of it out there, and I had offered it over to the Focus Fire group. I don't know how many people actually took us up on it. So when we first started this whole thing, it was one of those things where I knew Green hadn't read it, and I was like, we're gonna do one of the early ones.
That's not true. I had started it.
You had started it, right. Okay, okay.
I just never finished
but
it.
I was like, we're going to do this one because this one actually connects back to Destiny, and it's an interesting connection. But so Green, what was your first impression of, it's not really a book, of the short story?
It definitely came across as being written from a perspective that is not familiar, because a lot of this takes place in the Middle East, right? Like there's the Egyptian tie-in kind of thing. Where are they at?
Baghdad.
Do they say Baghdad?
Yep. Yeah. He was.
But that's only one of the locations. The other one was in.
Was it Jerusalem?
It's somewhere out. There's Damascus. Oh no, that's just the silk from Damascus. But it's in that Middle East area. So you have I thought it was a fairly clear representation of the cultural courtesies.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like the first thing that hit me, is just that very humble servant and opening, and it's very a lot of respect given back and forth. That was the first thing I noticed with it.
Cairo was the other one.
Yeah, that's right. It wasn't until quite a bit later that I figured out that it's more of a parable.
Yeah.
In some ways, like it is very much like Arthur C. Clarke, like you were saying, that it has this time traveler feel to it. But
there's a reason that it has that feel to it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there is time travel,
right,
but
right.
It's the time travel. Like if there was a story in the Bible about being careful of wishing to be in the future or wishing to be in the past, this could fit in that. That's how it felt.
That I agree completely with it. That is definitely it's definitely it's very it's very Arabian Nights-esque type feel. And not just because of the culture that it takes place in, but also because it's like that weird, you don't really know like throughout if it's like a parable or if it's it's actually like trying to be a story or whatever. I think is really I don't know. I really liked it. I really liked how they kind of tackled the concept of time travel, but they told it from the perspective of like the limited view of the traveler itself. Like that was so I know like with this particular, these like little things, you know, we want to talk about like for the first kind of segment, I guess we want to call it, what like overall, what did you like best about the short story?
I honestly liked showing the overlapping perspectives of what happened when he went back. Because you had the perspective of the character, the primary character in the story, but you also had the perspective of his wife. Like the story, like, because the guy goes into a shop, right? And he talks to the shopkeeper about this gate. The shopkeeper is not surprised he's there at all. And it starts to develop the story. And so the shopkeeper starts telling this gentleman about this time traveling gate that he has. And he tells him these parables, these stories about it. But in reality, these stories are actually tied sort of into what he's going through as well, or what he will be going through in some respects, because time travel is hard. But I think I liked the fact that, especially when the wife was brought in, the perspective of the wife, and then the perspective of the man who lived very meagerly, but that was because he had stolen from himself.
It's so,
which is it sounds so crazy.
It does. It's one of those things where it's like, as you're reading it, you're like, it's those, oh, okay, this makes sense. This makes sense. And then you like stop and you think about it and you're like, wait a minute. What? Yeah. Like, what?
Well, like, so he goes back or he goes into the future, right? Like he wants to get some money for this woman. He wants to woo this woman and have a dowry for this woman. And he goes into the future and steals from himself, because surely he's been happy all those years. He doesn't need it any longer. And then you find out that the reason why he lives so meagerly, like, is because he knows that his younger self is going to come steal that. And in order to have the dowry for the woman he loves, he has to basically set himself up. He is his own wingman.
Yep.
In some ways.
Yeah. It embraces that fixed timeline sense.
Yeah.
Very, very well, actually, I think. I like how it does that.
It was just interesting how the aspect from the wife coming next kind of ties into it, and with the selling of the necklace and all the different things going on there. It does certainly make you think on what is a proper use of time travel, which, to be fair, the entire point of the story is that there's nothing it's really going to help you with, but it's inevitable you're going to do it anyway. Yep. So
again, fixed timeline. Like, that's the depressing reality of a fixed timeline world, is that in, like, ultimately when you get down into it, there is really no such thing as free will. Because everything is a fixed point. And that's you know, kind of to tie back into our conversation when we had about Destiny. There's actually a principle that's called I think it's the Novikov self-consistency principle. And it basically is this thing that says, hey, look, in order for the timeline not to implode, this is what happens. And so when we're talking about like all these self-referring, like, they almost seem like paradoxes, but they actually are preventing paradoxes, which is this weird, like, it's just this really cool thing. But it's the way that, like, everything in this cosmos is able to stay contained and not implode on itself requires, like, all these things to come to. What did you like least about it?
You know, it's a mixed bag on what I liked least, because the thing that I liked least I also somewhat liked, which is, it sounds odd. I thought it was appropriate, I guess, is the better descriptor. But the ending, the fact that it is so sad,
and unescapable,
right? And that I appreciated as a reader, But I mean, you just, once you develop that relationship with the characters where you start to feel for the character, you feel bad for him. So you don't necessarily want that to happen. But yeah, it was nice to see that it ended on a sad note, a very realistic sad note for what was going on. It's just, yeah, that was pretty much it. It's not a super catchy thing at first because it is a short story, so you're getting very blunt. There's no flowery. There's not a huge amount of description of the different locations that they're going to. There is some, but it is very contained within this short 18 pages. What that would be, maybe 3,500 words.
Yeah, it's maybe. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Doing a quick word count on the Google Doc, it looks like it's 10.5 thousand.
Okay, so it's more than 3,500.
Yeah, it's 10,500-ish words.
Yeah.
Did you, so like, I know when we talked about Stormlight, we talked about like how, there was some reminiscence and we kind of mentioned a couple different things, but were there any other books or stories or anything that this like specifically called out and reminded you of?
It didn't specifically call out to anything, and I kind of get the whole connection to Destiny, but I had forgotten about the direct reference within the lore rather than the concept, because when I started reading this, I had it in my head that you were meaning that the concept of time travel in Destiny is related to this, and I'm like, but no. I mean, yes, sort of, but also no, because I mean,
as far as we know,
the thing with arguing with arguing a fixed timeline and the Vex, it becomes so convoluted, and it just breaks down what the Vex are if you try to force it upon it.
Well, it also breaks the whole point from our perspective too,
right?
Because that's like the cliffhanger, or not the cliffhanger, the snag of the fixed timeline model is that everything is fixed. Like that, I mean, by definition, there is no flexibility. There's no changing what is going to happen. And from a story perspective, like with a short story, that's all fine and good. But for something like Destiny, that's ultimately kind of problematic, because it kind of removes the impetus for the players to do anything. They're like, oh, well, there's nothing you can change. It's going to happen the way it's going to happen.
No point. Right. I think the nice thing about Destiny, though, is that there's two different sets of Destiny within Destiny. Because if you are not paracausal,
correct. Yep.
You are not exposed to this multiverse as cleanly as Guardians and the Hive and whatnot are, or Vex for that matter. But if you're just a plain old human or plain old exo, you are going to be in kind of a more fixed timeline.
Yeah. And that's what I do appreciate.
It's not 100%.
Right. That's why I appreciate the call out, was because I think that kind of was the challenge was, is it possible to exist in a multiverse and a fixed timeline? Is that two models that are able to be compatible with each other?
Yeah. I mean, Destiny is a experiment on that very thought game. I will say there is one book that came to mind that The Merchant and the Alchemist kind of reminded me of, in both the writing style and the somewhat concepts. It was The Night Circus by Aaron Morgenstern. It was a best-selling book for a while. I don't think it's on the bestsellers list anymore. I think it came out 2 or 3, maybe 5 years. It's not super, super old, but it has a very interesting perspective on magic and the consequences. It deals very, very heavily on the consequences of being raised within magic in a very structured version versus being raised with magic in a more feeling and emotional version. Anyway, it's somewhat of a love story, but also not, but also very Cirque du Soleil.
The kind of like, that reminds me of like the difference between like a D&D sorcerer and a D&D wizard-esque type approach to magic.
Yes, very much so that. They're still able to manipulate the same concepts, but there's a bet that goes on in the Night Circus, and they're pitted against each other. You also, if I remember correctly, you don't actually ever see the result of the bet, which is a really mean trick. But maybe that's why it reminds me of The Merchant and the Alchemist, is because it ends in a way that you're not expecting.
Right. Yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. Well, real quick, do you want to take a ad break and then we'll jump into like the style? I guess the style analysis, if you want.
Sure.
Tune into the Spinfoil Theory podcast for questions. Who is an orc? Who's an orc? What is an orc? What is that? For queries.
Did the Hive really just body shame the Vex into changing their frames?
For special guests.
All the guests.
For Spinfoil Theories. Mars
Even
saw
Levante
the
is
Sabbathoon. The Spinfoil Theory podcast. Insert information here. So he didn't give the information. We didn't give the information.
Spinfoil Theory is available on Spotify, iTunes, and Podbean. You can also get us at Twitter at Spinfoil Theory and or spinfoiltheory@gmail.com.
Okay, so obviously, like you had mentioned, it's a short story. So the style, like short stories tend to be, I think you kind of said they're kind of blunt. Like, they don't really have time to mess around with, flowery stuff. Mm-hmm. That being said, are you a big fan of do you read a lot of short stories?
Honestly, I haven't read too many since college, but there have been a few that will pop up on Reddit that are just the analysis of X, Y, Z kind of thing.
So how did you feel about the writing style for this one?
Well, I would say that the last story that I read for short story that would semi-remind me of this is I was at one point in time reading quite a bit of Lovecraft.
Yes.
Which are also short stories.
I'm working my way through a collection of them actually right now.
Yeah, I know. And I stopped reading those at night because I was having trouble sleeping.
What? I can't understand. Why would you have trouble? No, that's no, 100% I could understand.
Oh, it's even worse. There was a podcast where the guy did the readings like I do for Destiny Lore Audiophile, and he was very good at scaring the bejesus out of you. It's
very Ray of the Coos for you.
Right, yeah. But the interesting thing when it comes to short story prose versus short story in other forms, because I've done short stories or have read a lot of short stories in poetry form, because there's quite a few poems out there. The one that I went to state with back in high school for like a drama competition was Patterns by Amy Lowell. And it's a short story as well. And even though there are less words within the poetry than there is in this prose that we have with The Merchant and Alchemist, there's a very similar style in the storytelling. You have small segments as almost if it's chapters, but they're only a page. It's the small mini stories that you're getting in this overarching story.
Okay.
So within the short story aspect of Merchant and the Alchemist, you have the initial greeting to the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper tells, 2-3 different parables within the time there? Like there's
at least 3 that I can remember off the top of my head.
It's not necessarily all the same shopkeeper either, because the guy, I think, gets told 2 parables or maybe 3 parables, then goes to Cairo. And
I can't remember. I can't remember if it's the same shopkeeper though, because I remember him asking about the shop in Cairo.
Right.
So I can't. I don't think it was. It was the same. Okay.
It was the same one, but he wouldn't have known.
Right. That's right. That's right. Yeah.
The man, because he goes to the past.
Yeah.
And because certain gates, certain gates go one direction.
Yeah.
And it can only go back so far as the gate has been there.
I think it's like 20 years. I think was the jump point or something. The gate of years.
Yeah, but the gate within the first city is really fairly young, so it only goes back a few years.
Right,
so the guy travels down to Cairo to go to the older gate that's been there much longer.
Gate of seconds and gate of years. That's right, yeah.
Yes. And it's interesting to see the different parables within it. So you have the meta story of this following this main character, but then you have these mini stories and many groupings of characters that you're also getting in here. So he does a really good job of creating that connection, not only through just the concept of basic storytelling. It's not just one story, because he could very easily say, hey, this guy goes and tries to see his wife and it doesn't work out. I mean, you could have it be as very straightforward as that, but instead he goes into the concepts of what would be the problem with this. What could go wrong? What are the things that could go right? And he does a good job of weaving all these minis groupings together into the bigger one.
Mm-hmm. What
I will say
sorry.
the no, I know I'm reading through the questions too. I will say that the delivery in this one does take a bit of getting used to.
Mm-hmm.
Because the first time I read it, I was like, okay, I stopped after the first page because I was just like, oh.
That's the benefit of it being a short story, though, is that you can you can sit down, you can read it, kind of digest a little bit, and then reread it. Because sometimes short story, it's interesting to me because like I'll notice this with especially like Philip K. Dick's short stories are especially like this. Like you read it, and like his stories are literally 2 or 3 pages. Like he has a very concise writing style, but you read it and you're like, okay. And then if you read it again, you're like, wait, what? Like there's a completely different story that you pick up, having read it again. And this one, I think I kind of got that feeling from, I think for me, it was pretty effective, but it was even more effective because it was a short story and you kind of were,
right.
You felt okay and kind of encouraged to reread it because it wasn't like a, 5,000 page book where you are like, oh, I gotta, dedicate a year to doing this again.
I really did have to go back and read each segment. I think I actually read this in segments. So it's nice that when you're kind of going through it, you have the opening introduction part of the story, and then you get to the tale of the fortunate rope maker, and then where's the next one? The tale of the weaver who stole from himself. Which is the guy who goes to the future and steals the money so he can get the girl he wants.
Funny. And then I think the third one is the wife, right?
The tale of the wife and her lover, which is the same story as the one who goes and steals from himself, but it's basically she saves his life.
Oh.
Because she and her future self and her past self.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about all
together.
The different selves, yeah.
Oh, I love... It's just like, okay, leave it to the girls to figure out how to game the system. Because the girls totally gamed the system. That, is... If you want to find, my perfect story within the story, read read the one with the weaver, and then read the one with the wives. And the wives is my favorite part, but you have to know the weaver story because he's such a schmuck in the weaver story. But then the wife comes in and she's all sweet and she's figured everything out. It's great. It's great.
I completely forgot that she gamed the system with herself using the what was it, the necklace.
Mm-hmm. Because I think the band of bandits that the guy had stole the treasure from recognized the necklace. Right. And she convinced her current, I guess it was her current self as her past self. I don't remember which one. It's one of the two. She convinced them to go with her because if the necklace was not rare,
it couldn't be
the bandits
possibly
gave
the
up
one.
on trying to kill him. Mm-hmm. So she saves his life because he's a dummy.
Oh my gosh, I completely forgot that part. That little, I forgot that she used herself. I remember the reading the necklace part, but I forgot it was. I forgot that she had gone and gotten her future self to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's. So I guess that does kind of dovetail into the character development. Is there with short stories, it's kind of sometimes a toss up, but on this one, what did you think about was there character development, and what were your thoughts on that?
I think there's a forced character development because it's so short. It doesn't happen naturally because you're not sustaining over a large period of time per se, right? Like, you're not reading through a lot of different stories. You're reading through the forced character development comes in the fact that all these parables are thrown in there, and the parables are being told to the main character. And so he's being told by the wizard. Like, if you go back to the old, I know you hate it, but the old Tolkien model where it talks about the, what is it? The something hero.
Oh, the
Hero's Journey.
Yeah, Hero's Journey. That's not Tolkien, but yeah, no.
That's same era though.
Yeah,
same era,
he's
guys.
I forgot the guy who did it, but yeah, no, yeah.
I could see his face.
I know.
He has his own Spotify playlist. Did you know that?
I did not, but I'm also not really surprised. Like,
Campbell.
That's right.
Joseph Campbell.
Yep.
It clicked.
Yep.
Yeah, he has his own playlist where he goes through all of the Eastern religions and the philosophies, and he tells the parables through that. So if you guys... It's actually quite good. He doesn't go through the hero's journey in each of them. That's not the premise. He's literally just telling you about Buddhism. He's telling you about some of the Hindu stories. He's talking about how the different religions kind of intertwine together. It's fascinating.
I'll accept it.
Okay.
Begrudgingly.
I know you hate Hero's Journey, but it has that kind of wizardly feel.
My problem with the Hero's Journey is just that it's like you have to take such a 50,000-foot view. It's like it completely, in a way, destroys the whole point of the story itself.
Right.
But anyways, so like, I know this is kind of a self-answering question, but as a short story, it's kind of a standalone. So like the ending isn't really, I mean, would you consider the ending a cliffhanger?
The ending doesn't have a solid conclusion because it doesn't end in like a death or a Bilbo or Frodo going off into the east or anything like that, or the west. I don't remember which direction they went. They went on a boat ride. After 6 other endings that were written into the story. Let me tell you how I feel about that. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. Still hate the endings.
Which one?
All of them. All of them. Too many.
Just remember getting to the end of that and being like,
oh, God.
Are we done? Like, is this actually the end, or is this?
I think it was just exasperated. It was just overdone in the movie. In the books,
yeah, I can see that.
It's not nearly as bad, but the way that it was shot for the movies just made it so much more clear that this is... And the story went on, and this is what happened to this group, and this is what happened to this group, and Pippin and Merry survive, and Sam got married to the barmaid, and like so many endings. It's like, I don't need to know what happens to everybody.
They lived all happy ever after. Done.
Yeah.
I do actually like the last sentence of this one. It says, nothing erases the past. There is repentance, there is atonement, and there is forgiveness. That is all, but that is enough. Like, I really, actually, I think that's really kind of, I like how that just kind of, it really ties everything up in a way.
Yeah.
Like, it definitely...
It's a parable within the parables.
Yeah, it definitely leaves it open because of other things that happened in the end. But at the same time, it's a good, like, note to end on. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, forgiving yourself for some of your own choices.
Well, and that kind of...
I think it gives you that key a little bit more to do that, because...
It gives you permission
you realize
to.
how...
Yeah.
Yeah, you realize how your choices, while they do matter, are, in at least this story, somewhat predetermined.
Right, but I also like that. That's one of the reasons I do actually like this particular story when it deals with a fixed timeline, is because it's presented, and that's what I was kind of trying to say at the very beginning. It's like it's a fixed timeline, so that, like from an overarching view, like from a God's perspective, you air quotes there, like everything is fixed, like everything is going to happen the way it's going to happen. But from the person who's living that timeline, every choice that is made is in the moment is a choice that is made. Like ultimately,
I mean, somewhat, yes.
But I mean, from
the only one that I
go for it.
The only one I would say that doesn't do that is the one. I think it would be the wife.
But I mean, but she chose to save him, right?
Right, but it's her past self talking to her future self. Like the past self is the one whose perspective you're in.
Correct.
And she does make the choice to go and talk to the older self, but the older self would have known that she was going to come there because she had already experienced it as the younger self. Right.
And this is where, like, I know, gosh, this makes me want to force you to watch Dark so much, but I would probably not subject you to that. Like if you want to watch it, it's a great show, but for this, it's because this exact scenario is very important in that show. Because they are presented with multiple times they're presented with this situation, and every single time the future, like the current iteration, either remembers or is setting up the memory for the future situation, and every time it's also presented where like the future iteration does have the choice not to listen to it. They do, but like it's like in that moment they have that there's still a choice, but it's not like looking back there is no choice, but at the moment there is a choice. I don't know if that makes any sense, but like I like how they presented that very succinctly in this short story in that sense that there is a choice when they are doing it, but when you're looking at the whole picture, it's like, oh no, they're actually like the reason why that happened was because of, this
right, because you could see the meta of it. Right. It's the in some ways oh, never mind. That doesn't work as well as I thought it was going to in my head. I processed it before I got it fully out. Anyway, I do think other people would enjoy reading this. I don't think I would consider this necessarily one of my favorites, but I did find it interesting to read. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I will agree. Like as far as some of the thought-provoking short stories that I've read, I think that this is definitely up in the top. Like I think again, Philip K. Dick has some that are just psychotropic to read and really challenge your sense of morality. So like that's why his particularly I find are generally my favorites. But like this, I think it was Ted Chiang does a really good job. Again, the nice thing with short stories is like it's not a big time commitment. So like you can read it, and if you don't like it, it's like okay. But if you do like it, you can then go back and you can either invest as much or as little time as you really want with a short story.
You know what else I think is really interesting about short stories is that you are often primarily viewing things through the narrator. Like there is a narrator more so than there is the voice of the characters. There is some voice of the characters here, like that you will get a little bit of character development through the primary character, but it's very much so this narrator or the other storyteller within it, the merchant itself or himself.
Who is, and that kind of goes back to like that Arabian Nights feel, right? Is the narrator is a character who is narrating the story inside the story.
It's the guy it's the Robin Williams character.
Yeah. Oh God.
The little merchant guy that comes down. I love that guy.
No. I like him. But have you seen all the conspiracy theories about how it fits into other Disney stories and like how it can? There's some really interesting.
I have not.
Oh man,
I've seen how Frozen fits in with a lot of them.
Yeah, so Frozen's another one, but no, like there's like I'll have to see if I can dig it up because I don't remember it exactly. But basically, the idea is that Aladdin takes place in a dystopian future where everything has fallen apart, and the narrator is the genie and he's like basically the only one who can remember everything because he's a genie. So he's the only one that's lived through all of it. And like all the different things is because all the world has basically moved on. And it's just like, it's just really, it's, I love Disney conspiracy theories because it's one of those things where it's like, this is absolutely ridiculous. But then you start thinking about it, you're like, okay.
It's Disney though.
I can see where you're coming from. Like, don't necessarily agree, but there's a lot of coincidences. Yes, that is true.
Yeah. I do like that character though.
Oh God.
I like a storyteller character.
He does. And it's Robin Williams, so you can't go wrong there.
Yeah.
So I guess, like, how would you pitch this story to someone without giving away the story? Like, this is what I was trying to think of. Like, even in the discussion, like, sometimes it's kind of hard because like there's pieces that you need to talk about that you.
Right. I think that the way that I would pitch this, and it would depend on the audience, but considering our audience, I would say that it is a book about time travel and the different possibilities that could happen in this type of time traveling universe or this type of universe, right? It fixes all the problems from Back to the Future.
Yeah, well, that's because
because it's the fixed timeline.
Fixed
timeline. It's not dealing.
It's not a dynamic timeline.
God, is it Marty?
Yes.
It's not Marty going back and messing with his mom.
Oh
like
my
that.
God.
That doesn't happen.
John Mulaney has such the best summary of that.
I know. I like John Mulaney too. He also has a podcast. I don't know.
Oh no, I'm gonna have to look that up now.
It's great because he I don't remember what it's called, but he does this podcast with other comedians and they talk about and they discuss bits that they're writing in the at the process of it. No. It's super cool to like listen to because every comedian's got their own weird process and
oh my God,
he's got some great guests on there.
He just his explanation of Back to the Future is just it's seriously one of the best. Disgraced nuclear physicist.
Yes. But Merchant and the Alchemist does a really good job of explaining a time traveling scenario in multiple different scenarios and how it all would fit together if everything was done through fate. There's no paradoxes because it doesn't necessarily allow a paradox by having the fixed timeline.
Correct. Yeah.
So if you'd like to explore that, it does have a love story in it. It does have theft and kind of piratery
and action.
And it does have this desperateness to go and find one's love. Like there is a journey, there is a point to it, and it doesn't end happily, which is not a great selling point, but it does have kind of a mystery at the end of it as well, with dealing with the king.
Yeah.
Which you don't hear about the entire freaking story until the end. The last two he said the last line, it's the paragraph before you find out about a king. And it's like, okay.
Wait, what?
That happened. That happened.
Oh, short stories. So, I mean, I guess in closing, would you recommend or would you read something else by this author?
Perhaps. I might try to read something that's a little bit longer because I think if they had a little bit more space to flesh out a little bit more connection to the characters, that it would be a really compelling, I wouldn't say like Brandon Sanderson or Robert Jordan length book, but I'm thinking kind of like your supermarket books, the Jim Butcher size, something that's going to last maybe 20 hours for reading versus 56 or 70 or
So I would agree with that because I think I see the potential for someone who really does have a way of developing characters in a unique way. I definitely have that feeling with this with this short story. So, and that doesn't always. I mean, the thing is like again, kind of going back to Philip K. Dick. You know, Philip K. Dick never really wrote long stories. He focused really on short stories.
And some people are just better at writing short stories than they are
100%.
writing long ones.
Right.
So,
as frustrating as that can be, because there's some Philip K. Dick stories that I really wish we had more on. But
I think it would be interesting to read another one of his short stories and see if he takes the same formula, because this is a very particular formula that he used to tell this story. But I don't know if it would be as enjoyable the second and third time.
fair.
Fair. If you're expecting it.
Very, very Ready Player One-esque.
Yes. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of books that have formulas.
Yeah. That's just the one that jumps out at me right now. Okay, well, I guess that's really the gambit of questions that I have. That puts us really close. Actually, I think we're right under the 45-minute mark, which is what we kind of set ourselves like a time limit for.
Yeah.
I don't have a ending for this, so I don't know if Green.
Nor do I.
Okay, cool. I was like, I don't know if Green hit it, and I don't have the thing. So like,
can you resist this?
Yes.
I mean, you could say it, whatever.
We'll get Rick to do a resist this scream at you.
Yeah, something like that.
But yeah, so let us know either over on Twitter or in the comments on this episode, or whatever is easiest. I think I'll try to get these over onto YouTube. We're still trying to figure out exactly how we're doing this particular miniseries, but let us know what you think, and if you want a link to this short story, we do have a copy of it. This particular one, the next one that we'll be talking about, is also another one that we can put a copy to, but we'll talk about that when we talk about that. So until next time, try to resist this.